Hey everybody, this is my 20 long open-topped office tank, and tonight I'm going to get in here and do a water change. Nothing major. This is a pretty simple tank. It's got a hang on the back filter, which simply requires popping the top of it off, sliding the filter pad out, sliding a new one in, and I'm done. It's not a lot of complicated fuss like it is taking apart those canister filters on some of my bigger tanks. So whenever I do a water change on these smaller tanks, I always do a filter change, but I'm not going to do any major gravel vacuuming or getting in there and wiping down the glass or anything like that. I may remove a few of the plants, but I don't think I'm going to. My Water Sprite here is really starting to look nice coming up and out of the water. Some of the earlier fronds that came out of the water when I first put it in there sort of browned up and dried up. That's fairly normal. Whenever you've got a plant that's been growing submerged, fully underwater, and then you suddenly expose those fronds to being above the water, whether it's a Java fern or Water Sprite or Anubias, there's quite a few different plants that will grow emergent, but the leaves or the foliage that was prior underwater, it just dries out too much. It can't adapt to being above the water and exposed to all that atmospheric air because it sort of developed underwater. So what happens is those original ones will sort of dry up and die off and curl up and brown up, and then you'll get new growth being generated out of the plant, and any of the new growth that sort of comes out right into the atmospheric air develops that way, and you get the nice vigorous green growth like this. So some of those little brown tips I might get in there and snip off with a pair of scissors just because they're a little unsightly and there's no sense in having them just die off completely and fall back into the tank. But if I remove a lot of the little offsprings in there, the little baby plants that you can see everywhere, it will cause this whole entire floating mass to sort of change shape and squeeze together. And if it does that, it's going to change the way they're floating, and these fronds might not be sticking up in the air as much. I almost feel like I just don't want to mess with it. I do have a temple plant that all of the lower leaves have died off, and there's a few left right there up at the top. So I'm thinking about digging that up and moving it down to this end of the tank, or possibly even putting it in the middle here between these two big patches of Java fern. This is the Java fern Windelov. You can see how it's got those sort of flayed, fingery looking tips on the end of it. So if I put the the temple plant down here, then it will allow the Water Sprite, the Water Sprite won't block the light to the temple plant quite so much, and the temple plant might grow a little more vigorously, and the temple plant will certainly grow up and out of the water. I was kind of expecting it to have done that already, but I think I want to move it down to this end. What happens is the filter flows in, and when the water level gets down a little bit, you can see it creates more of a waterfall effect, and the water flows down and into the tank. But when the water is up at full level, it just flows across the surface, and that creates enough of a current that it pushes all my plants down to this end. So the floating plants are going to stay down at this far end of the tank, and then I think that temple plant might get moved, as I said, up into the center of the tank, or maybe even up to this far end on the left right there. So let me go ahead in there and get started. I guess we'll go ahead and make this a before and after. We'll get a look at what the tank looks like right now, so consider this your before. And there's your after. So not a lot of difference. I did move the temple plant like I suggested I was going to, but I also got in there and I really thinned out the floating Water Sprite. I removed a ton of the little offspring. I had a bucket full of it. So I will put my email down below. I've now sort of resupplied my tank downstairs with baby Water Sprite. I don't have any large plants at the moment, but I do have a lot of small plants. So if you're interested in buying some Water Sprite, my email will be down below. You can hit me up there and we can talk about it. Other than that, nothing really else to talk about with this water change. I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I changed the filter out. I did sort of root the gravel vac around in this one a little bit. There's nothing really rooted down into the gravel. The gravel's very shallow, so it's not like it really disturbs anything. It's not got layers of substrate. But all I did was sort of root the gravel vac around across the front where I got really easy access. And then I sort of poked it down into the gravel around here in the corners a little bit. And I drew a little bit of stuff up out of the gravel, but not much. This is a fairly new tank, and since I do that from time to time with the gravel vac, it sort of stays on top of that. I also took this little piece of woodwork that you can see right here. I enjoy this piece of wood because you can actually see through it depending on which angle you're sitting at. And you will occasionally see the fish swim through there. If you're sitting in my office chair looking over, it's kind of fun to watch the fish swim through that little hole in the wood. So that was down here. It was kind of hidden behind the greenery and behind those rocks. So when I moved my temple plant, you can see that big rock back there. I kind of use that to sort of hold the roots down so that it stays in one spot and doesn't get moved around. And I moved the piece of wood that was back there down to the end where we just looked at it. And that's about it. So hopefully in no time flat we will see some better growth off of that temple plant now that it's getting plenty of light. And we should also get to see that one coming up and growing emergent here very shortly. So there you go, everybody. Simple before and after, quick water change on my office tank. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget this one is my office tank. And I'll see you real soon on the next one.